Live from NTP Studios, this is K-12 Tech Talk. Josh is gone and Mark is gone. I am Chris, and with me is Eric, the intern. Eric, how's it going?
Poor substitute for the other two, but it's going great.
Do you always wonder if I'm going to say the intern, or do you just know that I'm going to go with that? Where was your headspace as I was introducing you?
No, I've gone through the stages of grief, and I've understood that this is just
Well, let's see. Josh went with his son to a Mizzou football game. And then
first game of the
Mark
season.
and then Mark just ghosted me. So I don't really know about Mark, but
Mark's
that's
probably off
fine.
fishing in a stream somewhere
Yeah, he's
in
fly
parts
fishing or
unknown.
something. I don't know. Who knows really? Who cares though? Because I sent you a text and you were quick to say that you would join me. So
What does
I
that say about me, Chris? What does that say?
that you're a good friend and I appreciate our friendship.
Okay,
I think
good.
that's all it says. I have several. I'm gonna try to not screw this up. So those of you that are solid listeners, you know that typically Mark does the news, and then we have some main topic. If you could see my monitor, my screen right now, I have Notepad pulled up with a decent little agenda. Mark uses like Trello with this AI plugin that goes to a Google Doc. Not me. I'm old school Notepad.
You're over here with Notepad using wingdings as the font.
Yeah, if I squint my eyes, I can read it into English. But before we jump into the news, I want to talk about Pray. So prayproject.com. They're hanging out with us for several weeks. They have a different take on device management. And I want to highlight a couple of things. I'm going to put a link to two things with Pray in the podcast description. But they do device loan management. And kind of cool, they have different kinds of loans settings, like an open-ended assignment, like you're loaning this thing out without any return date attached to it or any follow-up security actions. You trust the person you're giving it to. They have one called the unsecured timed loan, that it has a, a a time on it, but there's also no like security actions with it. Uh, but it maybe gives some messages that you want that thing to come back. And then they have a secured time loan where you give a device with a schedule on it, and when the time is up, the device locks, and it tells the user you have to bring that back. And maybe there's some at-risk stuff with that device too. So pretty cool, a different little take, some different features that maybe we're not used to seeing. And then they have some cool security features, set a device to missing, that kind of stuff, a screen lock. But one thing I saw here is they have camouflage mode that
Hmm?
changes like the Prey icon and look to make it just look like a game icon, to kind of make it kind of hide into the background. So maybe you're giving that out, and maybe it's for kids or for teachers, whatever. It's just not so easily seen that you have a tracking device on that thing. Kind of interesting. They can do custom remote wiping, file retrieval, disk encryption, remote alarm, alert message, all kinds of stuff. So check out prayproject.com.
Sounds awesome. Do you have their roadmap in front of you?
I don't,
Is
but should I look it up?
no is self destruct on one of the roadmaps.
I mean, that do you want the user to press the button, or I mean, they have a thing called kill switch.
I like
Uh,
it.
yeah, renders your device unusable in minutes by destroying its master boot record.
Okay, well, I'll settle for that.
Yeah.
I was thinking like sets it on fire, but that's
Oh,
dangerous.
that would be pretty cool. That you have to put like a piece of hardware installed. Confetti pops out. You ever watch that guy that does that stuff?
No, but I've been present while you lit a Chromebook on fire
Oh,
in my
that's
school.
neither here
So,
nor there. All right, let's jump into the news. The news is brought to you by Extreme Networks. Email dmayer@extremenetworks.com. September through December, they're doing Tech Bite Tuesdays. It's networking 101, not just with extreme stuff. Somebody posted on K-12 Tech Pro that it's actually legit. I mean, they go through all the different layers of networking, really breaking it down. So here's our two pieces of news. And Eric, I want your hot take on this. So the first
all
one
right.
comes from California. There has been speaking of kill switch, there's a kill switch bill that would create more oversight into how AI is developed and deployed in California. So it passed yesterday, Wednesday, August 28th. by a 41-9 vote. I think it's moving on to the governor of California, but it's all about curbing the growing power of AI. California, that's going to be, where your open AI is hanging out, Google, Apple, uh, Facebook, the whole bit. So uh, it's kind of called the Doomer Bill. So Elon Musk is all about it. Uh, Nancy Pelosi is one that is against it. And basically, here's some of the vibe. Companies have to put in a kill switch that will prevent AI from running amok. And it has to be overseen by the state's attorney general. AI has to have third party auditors and others involved that can whistleblow on things. So, what's your hot take? So, some are all about it, something that's going to
That's
screw up the growth.
so. Just kind of taking a step back, it's interesting to hear who's behind it and who's against it. And I'm curious as to why maybe Nancy Pelosi is against it and why Elon Musk is for it. I think there's a lot of opportunity here for people to just believe that AI is going to take over every human interaction and put us out of jobs. I don't know that I would say that I buy into that camp, but I'm for the idea of limiting it because anytime tech grows too fast, there are implications to society and
Right.
culture. So I feel like it's important to take a step back and say, all right, is this growing too fast? So uh, do you know any more about why who is for what and what's your thoughts on it?
It looks like Meta, Facebook, they said it's well intended, but not ready to become law. It's going to hurt business growth and job creation. California is known for being the foster of innovation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why tech companies are in California. Uh, and that does happen with a lot of laws, right? Like we get a law out there, and maybe it's not. I didn't dig into the sentences here, but maybe there's some sentences that are too vague. And I know it was talked about the cost. Uh, it says the bill itself would require safety testing of all AI models, costing more than 100 million to develop, or that need a large amount of computing power.
Yeah,
So we know that AI already takes up a bunch of computer power, and it's costing a bunch of money. So now we're adding safety uh, that's going to cost a lot more and require a lot more power. But
yeah,
is that good? I think that's
yeah.
good.
Well, I feel like there's always a fine line to walk with innovation, right? So there's the you can move forward, do great things for society, and you can also move backwards. And so the whole idea of regulating it, are we regulating too soon before we know what we're even looking at in a landscape and shutting it off before we can see potential, or are we shutting it off at the right time? And I'm kind of curious, Chris. I've been using AI almost every day in my job since the advent of Chat GPT and when
Yeah.
everybody was kind of losing their mind over it. Do you use it on a daily basis, and
I'm
how
not
is it shaping
daily.
up for
I'm
you?
not daily, but I use it. I use it to help me come up with questions if I'm needing to, uh, do an interview or just try to figure out a problem. It
Mm-hmm.
has helped me to come up with some good questions to ask. I've for sure used it to help me write some paragraphs when I'm needing to write some narrative stuff. And it's like the fluffy narrative stuff that is just a requirement with something
Mm-hmm.
that it's not helping. My it's like demographic data kind of bit, but needs to be 200 words or 400 words or whatever. Well, of course, your Chat GPT is going to help you out tremendously
Right.
with that.
Well, I.
Over Christmas, I read the Elon Musk biography, and he forever has been. And I don't have any Elon quotes here, but uh, he's probably saying like it's about time because he wanted
Mhm,
regulation stuff from the very beginning. So kind of
mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, I feel like when it first came out and we were even on the podcast talking about it, it was like danger, Will Robinson kind of thing.
Right.
What is this going to do to education? And it's going to write all your papers for you and all this. And I think we can talk a little bit more about this and what it even does to testing. But I feel like it slid naturally into my life as a brainstorm possibility.
Yep.
Now, I write a lot, and maybe some people know this that I typically will write every other month an article for Tech Pro. AI does not write that for me, but I do use AI in the process of it to brainstorm because it's a really good resource tool to be able to bounce ideas off of and be able to go out and gather information and say, hey, that's not a good idea, or this is a good idea. So I feel like for me, it's fit naturally into my life, and it's not been the doomsday that I really thought it was going to be. And that's why I was kind of saying earlier, is it too soon to go about regulating it before we know how it's actually fitting into our lives?
Interesting too. So at the beginning of the school year, I do like these back to school in services with our teachers, and uh, I did a little bit of campaigning about AI, uh, letting our teachers know what is cool, what is not cool in AI in its current state in K-12 in our school district, and basically encouraging teachers to play, to figure it out, to know that it's new, um, and to let them know what our policies and our procedures are, with student interactions with AI. But it's interesting, right? That and this is what I said in these meetings. I think K-12 um, tends to be an innovator, like because teachers want to teach and they want to impact kids so much. So we try the trendy stuff and we try the hot topic, and we try the not even the trend, but the thing that's going to be this great thing to impact kids and education. So here we have teachers in our public school system ready to embrace AI, and it's the end of August, and government is just now introducing
Yeah.
some law to regulate. That's how behind government is on this. We have teachers ready to teach with this,
Yeah.
and we have government just now showing up to say, hey, we should maybe
Hey
check
guys,
out
maybe
some
this is dangerous.
safety.
I don't know.
So I guess we'll see how that plays out. And okay, does California do that? So these companies just, move to Texas. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
interesting too. Uh, it's California doing it and not necessarily a federal thing happening in its current
Yeah.
state. You mentioned it. Let's talk about so next article. Um, Talking about testing. I have two AI news bits today. So, will AI make the standardized test obsolete? So there's this ETS. They've been around for like 75 years uh, for academic testing. We've heard of the SAT. We've heard, of these tests that are given, uh, and they're saying um, ETS is saying that they're coming out with, I guess it kind of came out in April and it's getting more traction. They're calling it talent solutions, not just academic testing, but they're adjusting to what our students, the future generations, are going to, experience in the real world. They say the future is going to be more uh, with like behavior than maybe cognitive. What that means is that testing needs to create experience that measure behaviors of the user, not just what the answer to the question is. So they want to measure things like perseverance and how
Mm-hmm.
we're thinking, how we're creating, how we're understanding, uh, and like they're even talking about measuring things like, did you need a hint? Did you reach out to a friend? Did you need more time? What behaviors did you use to get to the
Mm-hmm.
answer? What's your high and
You
I'm
know,
not bashing on this, Eric, but you came from some teacher land.
yeah.
So I know you have that headspace wrapped around you. When I say that stuff, what do you think about it?
So one of the things that I think regularly about is, for example, a lot of institutions have people who come into the institution, they train them with all of the knowledge of the institutional knowledge, could take years, and they become like the experts in that space. Now, when they leave, it's dangerous for that organization. So this is outside of education. So when they leave, it's dangerous for that organization. That person walks out the door because they have a lot of knowledge. Now, with AI, there's a lot of possibility to just document things, put it in Google Drive, a SharePoint, something like that, and then use AI to be able to index that. Because
Yep.
typically, that expert's like, hey, I got an email, I know exactly where to find it, this is where it is. So they have a lot of content knowledge. I think AI brings about the ability to index and find knowledge much quicker than we have in the past. So I think to that point, it's how good are you at finding resources
Yeah,
to answer a problem or answer a question? Whereas yesteryear was who's our person who knows all this information, and that's what our standardized testing was based off of: is how much do you hold inside your head
right.
and are able to solve this problem because you have that knowledge. And the future looks like how good are you at finding resources to be able to solve a problem?
Yeah, we've said for a long time, like smartphone invented, now everybody has access to the same knowledge, like they're
Mm-hmm.
holding it. And there are differences, right? There's a great difference between my father and how he uses a smartphone and what knowledge he can access and at what rate of speed and to what proficiency and blah, 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 compared to me. And then there's a difference too, right? Between me and my kids and how quick my kids can, type with their thumbs
Mm-hmm.
and access that information just the same. Uh, and that's for sure going to be the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a line in here. The idea is just to build an insight system that can be useful for kids and families and educator to know how kids are developing and what skills they're developing, um, how they visualize, how they address problems.
So it's interesting. There's two aspects of this with testing that. So the first aspect is what are you testing of the user or the person who's taking the test? Um, what what skills, what knowledge are you testing from them? And then on the other side is how are you grading it or how are you evaluating it? And I think there's a lot of possibility with AI to evaluate those skills without necessarily needing a human being on the other end. And so there's a lot of possibility for much quicker feedback for an individual as opposed to needing a human being on the other end to get that right away.
Yeah, yeah. This article this is kind of cool, and I don't think I had heard about this. The International Baccalaureate Organization,
Mm-hmm.
the IBO, in 2020 during the pandemic, because schools had closed. We're doing remote work because kids couldn't take the in-person end of year exam. They built a model. They used some AI, if you will, to predict what student scores would have been based upon historical data.
Wow.
That makes you feel a little different too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, kid, we think based upon AI, we think you would have gotten this score. And that kind of is speaking to that whole bit, though. Kind of the point in the article is that's the old school way, the standardized way.
Mm-hmm.
And if so okay, we're just saying that this particular kid, just by sheer he's in school for this many days with this particular subject matter, is going to end up being this smart. Like that's his trajectory, without any other factors thrown in there. Uh, so yeah, maybe we need to reinvent some of that.
Yeah.
All right, are you in that? I don't. Maybe I am afraid of AI if we're just going to predict how smart I'm going to end up being. All right, we got some listener emails here.
Oh boy.
So first one is, and this was so on K-12 Tech Pro, there is a weekly email that goes out that summarizes all the posts of the week that the community has submitted. So one of the most popular topics this week from the community was this: how do you collect devices from students that transfer out? So Eric, can you answer that to your previous experiences? Kids
Um,
leaving, what was your
yeah.
process? What was your procedure?
The answer is not well.
I was gonna say I was asking you to go first because ours is a
So
little rough.
my district that I came from was a very transient population because it's a tourist area. So you have a lot of people who move in for the
Hey,
summer.
real random. Are you watching that chimpanzee thing on Max?
Oh, is this like the whole Festus lady?
Yes, Festus to Lake of the Ozarks.
What?
It is crazy. So anyway, you're Lake of
Enter,
the Ozarks way.
enter Josh.
You're Lake of the Ozarks way, and
Festus.
there is a chimpanzee. What's it called? Chimp Crazy on Max. Um, where we do Midwest Tech Talk, Lake of the Ozarks. This chimp shows up down there. Anyway, transient. That's in the show. That's in the show too. That chimpanzee gets moved
So
around.
transient chimpanzees who had iPads and Chromebooks. No, but it was really difficult because we had so many people moving in and out. I the beginning of the year, he'd be like, okay, we had 2,000 students. And we'd be like, okay, we had 200, 300 new students this year, and this many
Well,
departing. That was wild. And we always sat there at the beginning of the year freaking out that we didn't have enough devices because we had so many walk out and so many come back. But what we ended up doing was at the end of the school year, just we let students keep the devices over the summer if they were 6 through 12. Students younger, actually, I think it was 3 through 12. Um, but we had kind of a survey that said, do you plan to move or leave the district this summer? And if they said yes, then we made sure that we collected the device at the end of the year. And throughout the year, as they were checking out and unenrolling with the school district, we had the secretaries at the front desk of their school collect the devices. And they kind of ran point on making sure, chargers, computers came back, and if we needed to put any bills on their account or things like that. So, but to fully answer it, not well.
I'm just gonna say ditto. Um, we try. We have a procedure. It's supposed to be that there's some moment when like the counselor's office is aware that the kid is leaving, and that in that moment we collect everything. But that's just not how it plays out.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes the family has moved away, and it's not until this transfer request comes in that we realize that we didn't get our Chromebook back. So it's just kind of one of those. We're doing what we can. We try to keep a good reserve. If we know that the student is transferred out but still living semi-locally, we can maybe reach out to the neighboring school district, maybe reach
Yep.
out, get our school resource officer a little bit involved, not in a threatening way, but just as a touch base kind of way. We try to go that route a little bit, but it's just rough. It's just kind of part of the game, I think, because you have 1-to-1.
I think it's tough. One of the things is if we had students go homeschooled or live in the region, we knew that they were transferring to a local school. We could utilize the social worker to go knock on the door and say,
Yeah,
"Hey, just a reminder, we still need to have this device back." But one thing I want to point out is that in in this whole scheme of things, um, when you realize you can set a Chromebook to not be usable or an iPad to not be usable if you want it to be that way. I think a lot of people view that loss as way bigger than it is.
yeah.
And what I mean by that is you have this physical connection to a behavior, and you think, well, they stole that device from us. Yeah, they did, but it's not personal. They're not stealing it from you. A lot of times it is a just they're moving out. It gets lost in the shuffle. And so it's not a personal attack on you at the school district, and it's not them trying to necessarily steal something from you. So some of it is a cost of doing business, and it if you break all the data down, it's pretty minimal in comparison to other things that go wrong in your tech budget. So I'm not saying that you don't address it, but what I'm saying is you slightly detach from it mentally that you are going to lose some devices. And that's something that I address with our board because that's something they get really concerned about. Like there are way bigger budget line items that go wrong every year than this. And I realize that this has a behavior attached to it and you're frustrated with it, but it's going to happen.
I have told our librarians help us quite a bit with our Chromebook check in, check out kind of thing. And I've told them because I have one in particular that does take it personal. Um, and we've talked about like un, we care an awful lot. But if the above us is okay with the dollar amount of loss that we've experienced and no one else is really saying anything, we have tried to be the greatest stewards ever of our inventory. Uh, but until it's more than just tech department or more than just library that's concerned about this money and whatever this dollar amount is, we can like it's okay.
Yeah.
Uh, and like you said, a lot of times, that kid, um, and and this is the case for my school district. It's not the kid's fault.
Hmm.
That kid may have moved abruptly. That kid may have moved not even realizing that Chromebook was not returned. Um, don't fault the kid. Uh, don't put that negative headspace stuff
Right.
going on. Just, you didn't get it back, and track it. You need to track it well. I think we need to be uh, held accountable in the positive and the negative way of how many Chromebooks we've lost or got stolen. We need to be able to say what that number is and what
Hmm.
that dollar amount is. But don't overthink that like they're stealing because they're a lot of times they're not like, yeah, I guess by the if you get down to the nitty gritty definition, yes, it's theft. But it's not purposeful theft. It's kind of a different kind of thing going on.
Well, and I think what I kind of broke down for myself at a certain point, probably like year three in a one to one, was that we were spending way more resources to recover them than the resources were worth. And when you turn yourself upside down to try to recover them, now that's time out there. If you can set up good policies and procedures to make sure that you get
Yep.
them back, and you should do that. But when you, as we do in K-12 tech, go down the rabbit hole, you get lost and you stop tending to the needs of your end users who need you at that moment. And
Yep.
I think that's where it becomes dangerous.
I for sure chasing a small rabbit here, but uh, when someone tells me if something's lost or stolen, I usually give it a hot minute because usually it shows back up.
Yeah.
Not that I don't care, but I'm like, I got other stuff going on
Yeah.
than to worry about
What
this one device right now that's moving around barely.
question for you, Chris? What's the weirdest place a lost or stolen device has turned up for you?
I don't know if I have to think about it more, but I know one time it was like a year later, and it was at it was like like a veteran centered Goodwill. It was like a place that people give things to give to veterans, and the person had given the Chromebook, but they had at some point it was opened up and the Wi-Fi was like disconnected from it. So not only was it a year later in another city, uh, but it was also like taken apart. Um,
Yeah.
it's like just super weird, you know. And then I guess we had one that was like someone bought it at an auction and then they got it and they're like, we think we bought this and it's stolen. Is that true? And we're like, yeah. But then this we did math on it was going to cost more because again, like time had passed. The cost of shipping, uh, we ended up working a deal. I think he like sent us a check. Like we ended up like selling the guy the the Chromebook.
So I had one turn up actually in the Caribbean islands.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
I was like, "What in the world?" They said, we have this device and it says it belongs to you. I bought it off of such and such, and it says it's locked." I was like, "Well, I'm sorry." That's hard. And then another one showed up in North Dakota, I believe, and a pawn shop.
That's
So
fun.
that was fun.
Now, I did have one of the best stories, and this is the story. So this kid was like, he reported he reported that he was chased, and this all ended up being true. Okay, so I probably shouldn't laugh. He was being chased by another student by a bully. I shouldn't laugh at all, right? Okay, he was being chased by a
Okay,
bully.
no laughing. Stop.
He was being chased by a bully, and he ended up on railroad tracks. Okay, so he's running for his life from the bully down the railroad tracks. His backpack falls. Chromebook falls out. He picks up backpack, loses Chromebook,
No
keeps
way.
running.
No way.
Okay. So then our school resource officer ends up going to investigate these for the Chromebook on the railroad tracks. And I'm telling him, like, there's the asset tag on the bottom, blah, blah, blah. So he finds Chromebook, but it's only like it's in plastic pieces. Like so a train ran over it and all that's really left is this one piece of plastic with the tag on it.
Yeah,
So like I'm just holding this little piece, it's like a piece of paper, And I was like, well, we can prove it's the Chromebook. But the kid was clear, like I remember it was like, there's no way this really happened to this kid. This story is so far fetched. I believe him. Like I completely think he was running down railroad tracks from a bully. The backpack fell, the Chromebook fell out. Train came, smashed it.
I There are stranger things that have happened,
And
but
like I would the SRO was like pumped that he got that tag from me.
the
Anyways,
story.
I don't know if we fix. I don't know if we. The answer to that question is how do we handle it? Not very well. Make your best effort. I think.
And don't worry too much.
Don't worry too much. All right, I'm gonna. I think we're gonna do one more. So this one's gonna be brought to you by Fortinet. So email fortinetpodcast@fortinet.com. Speaking of Fortinet on K12 sysadmin subreddit, somebody it was user JDSOK, JD maybe I don't know. Anyway, asking about FortiVoice. He currently uses my Voice Connect. He's considering FortiVoice. So like there's some pros and cons listed on there. So I'll put a link to that in the podcast description. So if you're interested in FortiVoice, you're going to get some honest opinion from some folks on K12 sysadmin subreddit. All right, last topic of the night, Eric. I'm going to kind of open it and you take it.
Okay.
And actually, I got one more sponsor to plug. It's NASCAR tonight. So check out ClassLink, ClassLink.com for your single sign-on and your rostering. Last topic of the night brought to you by ClassLink. We talked about this. So on Fridays at noon Central on K12 Tech Pro, we do vitals calls where anyone that wants to join, we jump on a call. It's a video call for like 15 minutes. You can sit there with camera off and be muted and just hang out with us. Or you can turn on your mic and talk, or you can go camera, mic on and talk to us. And then we typically post the recordings to that later as well. So we have some good conversations on there. So I think it was last Friday. Was it last Friday?
Yeah, last Friday.
Um, this came up and we talked through it, but I think there's more to talk through. It's just this phrase. I'm gonna let you take it. When you are technically right, but you're wrong. Eric, explain that to me.
Whew. Yeah, so I think this is a topic that really applies specifically um, to K-12 techs because a lot of times you can be really right about securing your end users or fixing a problem, but you approach it in the wrong way and it results in bad things for you and the district or your school. So I think so one of the examples right off the bat that we even talked about on Friday was communication. So, for example, the network goes down on a Tuesday morning at 5 a.m. due to a bad nick on one of your switches. And you race to go fix that issue and don't tell anybody about it. Now, all of the tickets start pouring in. People are showing up to work trying to teach students and they can't access the internet. And you're in that closet trying to fix it because you just want to get it up and running for them.
Right.
But you haven't communicated. And so you're technically right in that you're trying to fix the problem, but you haven't told users what's going on
Right.
and tried to mediate the issue. And so that's just one of the examples. And I think we talked through like, when was some time that you were technically right, but wrong? And I thought we had some good examples. Chris, you had a few.
Yeah, even with and I'm still dealing with it. Our Infinite Campus moved from Tyler Sys to Infinite Campus. There's been some questions about like the timeline of when our offices lose access to Tyler Sys. So we had shut off Tyler Sys, where just a couple people have view rights to it, but all of our offices, everybody else can't get to it. So that's what they know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is right. But I did not do a good job of explaining like timeline and what we're doing because of that. And what we're doing is this good thing where we have to get a snapshot of where all of our data is as perfect as it can possibly be in Tyler. We're pulling that so we can put it into a local server so that we can kind of have this thing that we can kick on when we need to pull transcripts, to pull data, blah, 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 blah. I didn't explain any of that. So I just have people that are irritated with me that I turned off sys access. Uh, and I have a good reason, and I can explain that. And I can explain that. I mean, I pretty much explained it in less than 60 seconds here, but I didn't explain it well to others. I just had this other thing. I think this is another good example. We have teachers with Windows laptops. We give our paraprofessionals Chromebooks. Uh, we don't support printing on Chromebooks. That's where the story like typically ends. That's our messaging. I don't unpack the further thing of how there was years ago decisions about we weren't going to support printing on Chromebooks. We're trying to reduce our footprint. We're trying to not use as much paper, blah, 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 blah. And I could tell you the 5 reasons of why we're doing what we're doing, but instead I'm just like, no. So I'm technically right, but I'm wrong because my messaging is all out of whack. I need to
Hmm.
communicate. I need to communicate better
Yeah.
because I
Yeah,
think
Chris.
people understand. Like people would get that.
So, and that's one of the other things that we talked about was assuming that a user knows um, why something is the way it is. An additional one is your attitude and approachability. So you could walk into a classroom and fix something and not say a word to the teacher and walk out of there and act like they're an idiot. But if you walk in there and act with empathy and say, this is what the problem is, and
Yep.
this is how we're going to fix it, and this is how we're going to keep it happen from happening in the future, that goes a lot longer in making sure that you repair a relationship from the issue and making sure that it doesn't happen again for the user in the long run. And then another thing we talked about was simplicity of what you're rolling out. So sometimes it requires that you take time to simplify an issue for a user, not like dumbing it down in the sense that you're talking down to them, but
Yep.
making sure that you understand what they know and how you can put it in terms that they can understand.
I tech. I mean, the general vibe of a K-12 tech is we're typically socially awkward.
We're weird.
We're weird. We don't make good eye contact.
We make
Which
bobbleheads of each other. Like we're
right.
weird.
And and those are also I think the marks of greatness in a lot of ways as well. But there's some stuff we can still learn, like
Yeah.
and I'm not talking about like tech knowledge, just how to deal how to survive society, how to get along with others.
I,
I think most K-12 techs always have some room for growth in that.
yeah, for sure. I always called it the personal capital. So if I could build the personal capital with our end users, they were much more forgiving when something went wrong
Yeah.
because I have been empathetic with them, I've been communicative with them, and they understand me and my department as people rather as the guys who just pass on knowledge and tell them the right answers.
I with the Infinite Campus stuff, um, and I do a bad job sometimes of my relationships with people, um, but I have banked on my previous like the pre-Infinite Campus relationships that I had built with my office staff with teachers. I feel like I banked, you know, changing to whatever sys you're going to change to. We poked every bear that we could poke. We gave our cooks these McDonald's looking touchscreen kiosks now. Um, our nurses had to learn new. Our secretaries did. Everybody. So I have felt like I've really banked on the relationships I had previously. I have hoped that they were strong enough that through Infinite Campus and we poked all these bears because we had to, that they can remember like, hey, we had good rapport before. Uh, this guy is for us, and we were for this guy.
Yeah.
So through all the suck of this, if he's saying that this is for the the good of the cause for the big picture thing, uh, I've hoped that 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 the relationship gets us through all that tension and all that bad stuff, and I think it has. We're in second week of school and we're making it, but again, it's that communication piece for sure.
So, to any of our listeners and potentially future employers for Chris, he completely botched his
We're making
infinite
it, man.
campus,
We're making
and
it.
is relying on the good things he did in the past. So,
Yeah, I'm just trying to smile. I did. I made myself. It was the first week. It was last week. Um, I made myself go walk down halls and into offices and say hi, and hang out with secretary counselor.
you
For
did one of these?
Yeah, I just smiled as big as I could. But I had some offices that were like, "Whoa, what is this guy doing in here?" Which speaks to that it had been a hot minute since I had walked in, but I also like they brought it up later that they were really impressed that I like made the walk down. So again,
Yeah.
I
How
think
dare you
we
show your face in here?
yeah, I didn't just hide behind my keyboard, you know.
That's good. But I do think that's important is that you're getting out and seeing people and continuing to build those relationships because that's something that we in tech have a hard time doing sometimes.
And I'm not, but I have to make myself. That is not my that's not my natural thing.
Yeah,
Again,
I
and
know, Chris. I
I
know.
think I'm like most techs. Like I think we're all the same pretty much.
Listeners, I've traveled with him. He's weird.
So are you, man. And
Yeah.
speaking of that, I think we can close with that, Eric.
Okay.
I we did it. We made it.
We made it. And I have a gripe. So y'all made a bobblehead of me and all of my family says that you did a disservice. There's a lot of crow's feet here. I'm only in my
Oh,
mid 30s. So I don't know where did this come from? How did you do this and
your face.
why?
We took uh I think it's like bobbleheads.com or something. And
You just Googled it. You're like, how do I make a
we
bobblehead?
sent multiple pictures. I took them off your Facebook profile.
Okay. Well,
And
that's
they needed like
bad
front
OPSEC on my part.
front of your head, side profiles, and then they take clay and we went through a process where they modeled out your head and we got to make small adjustments with the clay. And
They
then
sent you the clay.
I mean you get to a good proof and then we made what was it, 20, 30 of those bad boys.
My wife thinks it's really weird that there are 20 to 30 of these bobbleheads running around of people that I don't necessarily even know.
It is weird. I I'm all about it. I mean, I have one and I look at it pretty much once a day
My
anyway.
kids think they're cool. Everybody who comes to my house thinks it's weird.
I told you so. In our office, like one sits, and there was someone that I mean, because you know, you see a bobblehead and you think it's like a Cardinals player or a
Yeah.
musician or something, and you're like, oh no, it's Eric, the intern. You wouldn't get
You
it.
don't know him. He's not actually.
Doesn't make any sense now that I'm saying it out loud, but all right. Anyways, we love listener emails. Email K12techtalk@gmail.com. We are K12 Tech Talk, and so are you. Eric, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for hanging out with me.
Yeah. Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.